A child in a cozy home with lots of toys witnesses not one Santa, but several come down the chimney and enter his house. Even more wander around outside the windows. The Santas are tormenting him, drinking from a flask, and scaring the child. An old man with a scientific helmet wakes up screaming, and everyone else does too until they hear a child crying. The old man goes up to him while a brain in a tank says, "Who has stolen the child's dream?" The mad genius Crank in his evil scheme, to what depths will he not descend? Will the tale turn to tragedy or have a happy end? The old man is very upset. On a crowded street, blind men called Cyclops are shouting, "Penetrate the corridor of shadows and you will enter the world of the chosen ones, renounce the gift of sight." There are skeptics around you, afraid to share with us the dead of night. Pluck out your eyes and come join us, help us build a better world. There's a man calling attention to the strongest man in the world. The announcer claims he's going to use his mighty strength and power of concentration to break out of the chains. He demands absolute silence. During the performance, the announcer catches a little boy stealing money from orphans. Another man appears concerned, but discreetly stabs him. Strongman wrapped in chains sees the bloody knife and breaks out, coming to the aid of the announcer. He is dead. There's a wall of posters that read, "Enough disappearances," and "Missing child." Strongman takes the dead man back to his home where he grieves over him. He helps a little boy clean up and burp after eating. The child notices that, for some odd reason, there are candy apples dangling outside the windows in the rain. He takes the candy apple and the Cyclops outside shoot down the door. When they enter, they can see everything in the house through the metal device they have on one eye. The man is hiding with the little boy, covering his mouth. They are nearly found, but the men give up and examine the dead body. The child bites into the candy apple and they somehow hear it from rooms away. The man points a gun at the strongman and he proceeds to fight as hard as he can. The little boy, Dendry, is kidnapped. Strongman must now flee the Cyclops men pursuing him. He enters a little office and is bombarded by children. They don't know him, other than he's the strongman. He's ashamed when he tells them that he lost Dendry, but refers to him as little brother. The girl notices the Cyclops approaching the room and warns the others. The Cyclops enter and notice some money and a tied-up man. They say the kiddies are doing very well and mockingly thank them for waiting. When a small boy tries to stop them from taking their money, a Cyclops reminds him that their ears are so sharp, they can hear what people think. They drop a few notes for the children to buy some candy and then leave. The children regroup and begin taking piles of money out from under tied-up strongmen. An alarm sounds and they hurry to leave, complaining about the Cyclops men. The girl gives strongman a bit of money, but leaves him tied up and claims they are even. He breaks out of it and yells to ask if they know where to find these Cyclops men. They just tell him to beat it. The small woman and clones are singing happy birthday to a brain in a vat that they refer to as Uncle Irvin. Crank demands to know what all the noise is about. He reacts a bit sarcastically when he finds out it's because of Irvin's birthday. Irvin calls to him, saying he thought long and hard about why the children only have nightmares and that he believes it's because of the evil inside Crank. He asks him to seek the cause of his torment in the molecular study of his tears. Crank wants to know who would make him cry, and one of the clones suggests they make him cry with laughter. He sings about being a gnome in a bag of bones, a man of means that's filled with beans. Needless to say, it does not amuse him at all. Irvin attempts to get Crank to cry by telling the story of an inventor that could create life. The professor mocks him by saying, "Ah, a fairy tale, I can already feel tears in my eyes." Irvin continues and says that since the professor had no wife or children, he decided to make them in his laboratory. He started with a wife and fashioned her into the most beautiful princess, but a wicked genetic fairy cast a spell on the inventor. Because of this, the princess was barely taller than a grasshopper. He cloned 6 faithful and hard-working children in his own likeness, but fate played a trick on him once more, giving them all sleeping sickness, craving someone to talk to. He grew a poor migraine-ridden brain in a fish tank. Then at last, the inventor created his masterpiece, more intelligent than the most intelligent man on Earth. But the inventor made a mistake. While his masterpiece was intelligent, he had a defect to where he could never have a dream. It was a shame how quickly he grew old because he was so unhappy. That does it, and a single tear comes from Crank's eye. The clones and little woman scramble to collect the tear. Irvin continues saying, the poor masterpiece became so crazed that he believed a single teardrop could save him. After committing many cruel deeds, he died a horrible death, never knowing what it is to dream. Crank is furious and orders everyone to get out. One of the clones whispers that he'll see Uncle Irvin later that night. Crank demands the brain be silent and shuts him away. twin women are collecting items from orphan children. When they don't give them enough, the twins threaten to put them in a dark hole filled with spiders. Miette gives them less than what the group really obtained and they warn her not to get sassy. Strongman is sneaking around and tempts a dog with meat while the guard is sleeping so that he can get into the room with Miette. The twin women reveal a safe that's identical to the one they want the children to rob. They'll need 2 hours to crack it, unless someone knows who would be able to carry such a thing. Strongman breaks in and immediately moves the safe to keep the dog out. A boy says he's the strong man who breaks chains. He reluctantly goes with them because he wants to know where the Cyclops are in order to save his kidnapped little brother, Dendry. To get in the room, they tempt a mouse with cheese and use a magnet to retrieve the key. Strongman brings the safe to the shipyard and as they collect the loot, the orphans start calling him Mr. 1. He says he is not a thief, and the children try to justify it. He hears the Cyclops transporter passing by, and pushes the safe into the water so that he can go save Dendry. Miette tells the orphans to tell the twins that she'll bring him back and won't be long. As Strongman attempts to follow the truck, Miette swears that little brother will be eating him by the time he finds them. Strongman tells her about the night he found him in a trash can and she says that he's too little to bother. He freaks out and refuses to go with her, so she hands him the same device the Cyclops wear. He may be convinced to infiltrate the Cyclops fortress with Miette. The twins are very upset that Strongman and Miette are missing with the jewels. They discuss other children they've had, implying that they are dead now. Perhaps Miette will have an unfortunate accident soon. Crank summons the clones to tell him a never-ending story so that he may sleep peacefully. The story is complete nonsense where things just don't go together, but Crank is delighted because he cannot dream his own dreams. The clone tells of whales and xylophones and a sea and sky that blend together, a sea you fly through, and the sky you swim in. He encourages them to tell him about the igloos that turn into mushrooms. One of the clones arrives to speak with Irvin, and he asks him if it's true that there is an original clone that is unique among them. Irvin tells him it's true, and that the others are cheap replicas. The clone wants to know who it is and Irvin tells him to attach himself to the child to find out. There are cameras and he'd be in a lot of trouble, so he is scared. Irvin tells him that only the original would be brave enough to do it, which means he must, because he is the original. He is very excited but nervous and wonders if he'll be lonely as the original. After the clone is hooked up to the dream helmet, Uncle Irvin speaks to the clone softly until he's asleep. When the clone wakes up, Irvin has him throw the mysterious message in a bottle into the sea. Irvin says, "May someone find my plea to get it over with." Cyclops are walking Miette and Strongman into their building. He grabs her and whisks her away when they aren't looking. He puts the metal device on his eye and mimics the language of the Cyclops looking at him. He is convincing enough. They spy on the preacher of Cyclops speaking about when he came to Earth and found a world that was filled with dogs. It became his duty to recover the power that human scum illegally seized. Children are led into the room and the small woman accuses them of being short by one. The preacher says it's becoming more difficult to get kids because of all the posters. They pay him, and he continues his sermon. He encourages them to open their third eye and says that they are the great superior race who shall reign once more on Earth. Strongman spots Dendry and slides into the room. Miette follows and they are both taken. A man gives the twins this information for money. After he sells them the loot that was taken off of them, he tells them that they're scheduled to be a midnight snack for the fishes at Pier 24. Crank asks Irvin to help him, since he understands feelings more than he does. He asks him why the children are having nightmares. Irvin says that he can keep prosecuting children, but there's something they have that he never will, a soul. Crank mocks him, saying that Irvin doesn't have a soul either, not even a body, that the man who made them all was a monster. Irvin says Crank is the only monster here. The Odd Family prepares Crank for something he hopes will make the children stop fearing him. The message in a bottle is still floating in the sea. The twins appear in a house belonging to a man named Marcello. They say they need his creepy crawly things and wonder if he's still got the knack. He begs them to leave, but they tell him the least they can do is look after him today. They tell him they need the big moron back, and that Miette can be a midnight stack for the fishes. Marcello doesn't look good as he opens Russian dolls to reveal a small green bottle. He prepares a tick that will help him complete his plan. Crank is dressed as Santa, dancing and singing for the children. It's very scary. He tries to dry the children's tears, but it's as if they know he doesn't have a soul. He desperately tries a bit longer before losing it and taking out his anger on the clones. Miette and the strongmen are tied to boards, waiting to be killed. Miette says, "You're born in a gutter, you end up in the port." Strongman is sad and says that she's too little to be thinking that way. The Cyclops start taking bets on whose board will fall in first. The tick with the green poison latches on one of the Cyclops and then returns to Marcello's dog. As he rows a boat to save Strongman, the poisoned Cyclops attacks his cult brother. Despite Strongman's pleas for Marcello to save the girl, Marcello unties Strongman. He jumps to safety. Miette falls in the water and Strongman screams, "No!" Under the water, there's someone in a suit that carries the girl to his underwater lair. After he accidentally steps on her hand, she wakes up and he's excited she's alive. He says she's lucky he found her. Miette asks if she's seen him somewhere and he says he doubts it because he's always underwater. He says it's dangerous up there and that someone wants to kill him. She tries to ask who, but he can't remember anything. He calls himself a treasure hunter and says that the city's history is all there in his room, cast into the sea to be forgotten. Miette takes what was left in a safe. Since this underwater man found it, she tries to leave, but opens the wrong door and toys fall out. Underwater man is upset and cries about children. Miette asks more about it and he says that an evil man takes them in a boat to hell. A tattooed man somewhere on the surface knows more. A map of the minefield is tattooed on his body. She decides he's a nutcase and looks into the scope, happening to see the 5 kidnapped children, along with Dendry. Strongman is at a pub, sobbing over Miette. A woman tries her best to make him feel better, and continues giving him drinks. Miette is walking in a hidden part of the city where she avoids being seen. The woman thinks he's getting better, but Strongman goes back to sobbing and Marcello is grieving for her, too. Miette sees him and scolds him because she believes he's wasting time with the woman. He's in absolute shock that she's alive and knows where Dendry is. He passes out, drunk. Marcello is so happy to see Miette and apologizes for failing to save her. He asks how she survived and she says he wouldn't believe it. They hear someone coming to collect the passed out Strongman and he tells her to run so that they keep believing she's dead. The orphans join Miette outside and hide until they get the chance to save him by using a crane. The message in a bottle collides with a ship and sinks down to the man in the diving suit. Miette and Strongman are nearly asleep when she asks him what he did before. He says he was a sailor that was supposed to be harpooning whales, but he'd hear them sing and always miss the target, so he was fired. She says she doesn't have anyone who cares about her like he cares about Dendry. He tells her that Dendry is his little brother and Miette is his little sister. She is pleased. The underwater clone is sleeping when the canister falls and breaks. The green smoke of a dream enters his nose. He sees the message that Irvin created. It reveals that before the clone children were ready, Crank attacked the inventor that created them all with the help of the inventor's wife. They threw him into the sea. He is disturbed and processing this when the green smoke travels to other houses, making children cry. It reaches Miette and she has a nightmare about the small woman who steals children. She said there were mines in her dream, and that's when she remembers what the underwater man said about someone having a map to the minefield tattooed on their body. The twins discovered that Marcello let Strongman and Miette get away, so they ordered him killed. After they hear the gunshots, we see that he was spared. Dendry is accidentally sent up with Crank's dinner and eats it himself. Crank isn't upset, and speaks to the child like he envies him. He calls him his angel and guest. He says loneliness haunts him and he looks forward to visitors. Uncle Irvin calls it nonsense and is covered up. Crank asks the child if he's influenced by the full moon like the werewolf. Dendry shows no fear, so Crank decides that this is the child he needs. Strongman has nearly led Miette to the tattoo shop when she asks him to slow down. He massages her little feet and she asks what he'll do when he finds Dendry. He says he'll find work, a house and possibly take a wife. She asks what kind of wife he wants and he says he's not in a hurry to find out. He gets a tattoo that says Miette's name and she tries to ask once again if the artist remembers the person who has the map of the minefield. They argue a bit until Miette bribes them and the wife rips off her husband's toupee to reveal the map. At the laboratory, the small woman and a clone are monitoring a screen of the minefields. Uncle Irvin claims that what they're seeing is the Messiah coming to save them. It's the underwater man, dragging things behind him as he walks on the ocean floor. Miette and Strongman are getting a boat ready when the tick discreetly bites him and the twins show up. Miette says they're never going back and they don't deny that Miette or Strongman will not be returning. Miette hands over the loot they have and Strongman begins to sweat. He eyes Miette and slaps her hard across the face. She's confused and crying as he strangles her. One of her tears flies into a spider web, which reflects a shaky light and makes a dog start barking. A bird takes off flying and poops on the windshield of a car, which makes the driver hit a fire hydrant that pours out water. Topless women run out of the flooding building, and a distracted man causes a power outage in the whole town. A blinded ship crashes into the dock where Miette was being strangled. Strongman lands in the water, followed by Miette. The ship stops within inches of the twins and they laugh like the crazy women they are. Strongman has apparently snapped out of his poisoned state of mind and holds Miette safely as they bob in the water, while the tick travels to get back to Marcelo. The twins prepare to start an oil fire in the water to kill Miette and Strongman. The tick tells Marcelo what's happening and he shows up at the dock. The tick poisons the twins so that they turn against each other and fall into the water. Marcelo lights the oil and they are soggy toast. The small woman and clone can see on the monitor that whatever it was is somewhere in the fortress now. As Crank works to prepare the little boy Dendry for whatever he's going to attempt, Miette and Strongman are still working to get inside the laboratory. Irvin is coaxing Crank to sleep with the dream helmet on. As Miette climbs the stairs that send alerts to the small woman, she gets a gun as Miette starts running, but she gets lost. All the clones find Strongman and he throws them down a conveyor belt one or two at a time. Before the little woman can shoot Miette, she is harpooned through the stomach by the underwater man. When she sees him, she calls him Professor. He calls her Martha, and says there's no professor, just a terrible mistake that needs to be erased. The clones find the underwater man and all but one think that he's the original. The clone that helped Irvin is disappointed. Underwater man starts planting explosives. Miette reminds him that they have to save the children before everything is blown up. He says he forgot and shows her the toys he's planning to give them. Martha has one more trick up her sleeve and lures Miette closer by handing her a key before pulling a lever that opens the floor from under her feet. Strongman appears, saving her from falling by grabbing her hair, but then he falls in. Miette enters the room with the brain, and he says he's waited for her for some time. He tells her that the minefield in her dream was a message from him. She tries to rescue a child, but the brain tells her that if she wakes him up that way, she'll kill him. He says that she must find him within the nightmare to save him. Miette wears a dream helmet and goes to sleep, entering the dream house through the fireplace. She picks up Dendry and the doors and walls change all around her as she realizes she's holding Crank instead. Miette offers to trade places with Dendry so that he can be with his big brother again. Crank accepts and Miette is aged to grow old while Crank becomes younger. Now that he is short, he can't reach the rope to escape his own nightmare. It becomes a cycle of torture as he becomes the child experimented on. He dies a horrible death. Miette wakes up with Strongman and Dendry by her side. The underwater man has decided the void equals infinity and he will explode with the lab. The clones escape with the brain and Strongman escapes with all the children as the underwater man catches one of his old laboratory notes. He realizes a little too late that he's their creator, not a clone. He calls for them to return, but his fate is sealed. And the movie is over.